All right, it's your show.
Well, it's my show, but you had some things to ask me about, Brian, as you told me earlier today before we went on the air.
Well, we have a few things here that we haven't been able to do on the drive-thru, so we're going to conquer your show, take it over.
Why is the drive-thru always so jammed and we got nothing going on over here these days?
We're having the yips movement. Everyone's coming, and we're taking over your show and making it for the people here today. Lots of desk drumming and all sorts of chaos. But, Jim, we're going to have some guests the program. Before we get there, let's talk about some recent retro action figures or retro wrestling figures.
What are you?
There's really no action. I mean, you really can't say action, I don't think. I think you just say these are retro figures because
you can make them have action if you move them, but they're not self-animated. They're not.
There's no spring action.
Beings.
There's no spring action.
No kung fu grip.
Well, they have a grip. This PN News figure here I have in my hand has a grip on it.
He's got a
gold microphone.
I was going to say he had an Egg Foo Young grip instead of a kung fu grip. He was a.
And by the way, we'll talk about this real quick because PN News is the latest figure that was put out by KWK. Let me grab one of these over here. These
Yes, you're so loud.
The official KWK Kayfabe Heroes wrestling line, PN News. There's two variants, one in his traditional baby blue, and of course one in his famed orange getup with the word yo right on front.
Yo!
But we have a few extra of these that were thankfully sent over.
Now think about this. This was 1991. The kids had been rapping for a while at that point. Yeah. And the brain trust that was Jim Hurd and the rest of the echelon at TBS thought that this guy was a cutting-edge rapper because he said yo.
Well, he actually said yo, baby, yo. And it always made me laugh because that was the thing that Eddie Murphy made the guy say at like gunpoint in Beverly Hills Cop 2. It's like, do you like rap music? Say yo, baby, yo. It's the same thing. Almost not at gunpoint. Unless you looked at the ratings, not at gunpoint. But that's what PN News was saying to the audience.
They tried everything else but gunpoint. That's, I think people would have just said, go ahead and shoot.
Well, like I said, we have a couple of these rare figures because it was not a large run. So these are all collector's items. We have a couple extras that were sent over to us by KWK Shawning. We're going to have a contest on the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. Best rap. Write a rap, and we'll judge it. The experts in rap, Jim Cornette.
Now, wait a minute. You're saying that they have to write a rap, and then we got to read it, and we got to judge it. So if you've read the raps they've written, you'll know they're really well-written raps.
Yeah, it has to be something about the show or about something we talk about. It can't just be, hey, here's a rap I wrote years ago. I've been waiting for my chance. And also, be conscious that we're not going to be able to read it or listen to it if it's just filled with filth. So if it's something
unlike this program,
if it is something in rhyme that the Von Erichs would reject in 1983, don't send it in. But otherwise, the Cult of Cornette Facebook group will have more about that. Jim, I have here, move over here.
You're over there now.
The latest from the official Grapplers and Gimmicks line by Hastel Toys.
Now, is this Lynn Denton's firm?
No, that would be just Grappler, no Grapplers and Gimmicks.
Oh, okay. So he started Grappler and Gimmicks, and now they're trading on Grapplers and Gimmicks, trying to avoid some kind of copyright infringement.
Hold on this topic. Should they have stayed the Grapplers, or do you think becoming the Dirty White Boys was the right move?
I think at the time the Dirty White Boys was a better move because honestly, Lynn was great with the Grappler gimmick, but it was pushed and it was established in Portland. When they came to Tennessee as the Grapplers, there had been so many masked guys and so many masked jobbers, and just so much of the mask thing had been prostituted that I think when you could see their faces, and especially it gave Tony a gimmick for years after that, but when you could see their faces and, because they were both excellent workers, it was better for that particular place and time.
Well, the tag team featured here from Hastel Toys, no name, a lost opportunity to say not the Mounties, the Pierre Carl Ouellette and Jacques Rougeau.
Pierre Carl Ouellette, you see, you don't have good French accents there, Brian.
Oh, you do?
Well, yes.
Oh, you do? Oh, you do?
Oh, you do? Oui, oui, monsieur.
Oh,
I do. Oh.
A
petit in the soup son.
All right.
In the soup son, in the soup, and then you have the cooking.
First of all, we apologize to all of our French and French Canadian fans. Second of all,
no, I'm not apologizing to any French Canadians. They never apologize to anybody else.
Once again, I have here, they were known as the Quebecers in the WWE in 1993, which was known as a WWF actually in 1993. What do you think the finishing maneuver listed here for Pierre Carl Ouellette? What do you think the finishing maneuver is?
Oh, good Lord. I'm trying to, because it's almost never what they actually used.
Almost never. Yeah, they've caught us a few times.
They caught us a couple times, but secondly, I'm trying to remember what they were using. Was it the Alouette, Gentil Alouette? I don't know.
The Canadian Crunch.
Okay, I don't remember the Canadian Crunch being, unless that's a soft drink.
What was Jacques' finishing maneuver? Or what is the figure's finishing maneuver for Jacques, I guess I should say.
Jacques' finishing maneuver was getting so much heat that they finished him up.
That's right, Jacques Jolt. Jacques Jolt.
Jacques Jolt.
Is that why they finished him up in 94?
Which year? I can't remember what he went through a time or two. No, Jacques was a fine talent, but he had ways of getting heat on himself because of the French-Canadian air that he exhibited.
And by the way, the back of this figure promises coming soon. A couple of interesting figures. We have Downtown Bruno.
All right.
Who's dressed like Brian Hildebrand for some reason. And here's a big one. James W. Ware. James W. Ware with his faithful bird, who I guess...
No, wait a minute. How in the world can he not be Coco? He was Coco Ware in his first wrestling match in 1978. That was 7 years before he went to the WWF. How could he not be Coco Ware now?
Well, somewhere along the way, he sold the rights to Coco to someone, but I don't know how that would work.
He sold his soul to Coco?
That's not exactly what I said. And it sounds so ridiculous because it is, but there it is, the upcoming figures. But this is the recent release. Grapplers and Gimmicks, Hastel Toys. Not the Mounties, not the Quebecers, but almost.
Not Coco.
Jim, I have here.
I wonder, could he just be Co?
Co-ware? Well, I have here from Zombie Sailor's official Wrestling Heels and Faces toy line, President Jack Tunney.
Oh, my God.
Although it doesn't say president, it just says Jack Tunney. I don't know if they're allowed to list the official office title that he had for the bullshit position, but he wasn't really the president, but he was someone who made as much money on the WWF expansion almost as much as any wrestler in some ways, right?
What are you talking about? Almost as much as any wrestler. Jack Tunney, I guarantee you, made more money at that period of time in his affiliation with the WWF than any of the boys did. Maybe Hogan. Because not only was the Tunney family really the operators and manipulators of Ontario wrestling and that part of Canada wrestling for years and years, even predating Vince McMahon Jr. But Canada was always an important market for the WWF during the time of Vince's expansion. And goddamn, who was it just cut the promo on one of the programs saying even when business was down, Canada was always there. And it was true. And Jack Tunney, as owner of the promotion and the ruling family there, out of Toronto with those stadium shows they did and the Sky Dome and the blah, 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 I would think he made more money at that period of time than any of the boys. As I said, maybe except for Hogan, because the promoters of markets like that were always making more money than the fucking boys.
So I have this figure here, and again, it's cool for someone like me or other nerds who are trying to complete their collection of every living person that was involved with wrestling in the toy years. But Jack Tunney as president on screen, was there a least charismatic man to ever be president of a wrestling company? And what are your thoughts? What should that role be? What kind of personality do you think should be in that kind of role?
Well, remember when they had Bob Geigel on television as the president of the NWA? Because he was the president of the NWA, and he had flip-flops and shorts on and a Hawaiian shirt and a bald head. Fucking hell. And that was the way he really dressed, but we didn't need to know that. Jack Tunney, you didn't need charisma at that point to be the president of the WWF or be the figurehead president of a wrestling promotion. You were supposed to be an older guy that looked good in a suit and was saying legitimate shit and not sounding like a gimmick, so that the gimmicks, the talent, and their antics and behavior would stand out. And then, you know, there's always been the commissioner or the special promotional executive or the, you know, representative of the promotion that was really in the office some kind of way, was one of the boys or had retired from being one of the boys. And I think those types are easier to draw money with because you can get them in the ring, or they can do angles, or they can cut promos. With Jack Tunney, obviously, you couldn't do any of that because he couldn't do any of that. But he was a really stately looking gray-haired gentleman who you could believe was the president of a fucking, you know, some type of sports organization. So it's pick your poison. I always like the Gorilla Monsoon type, or the you know, the Bill Watts type, or the Bob Armstrong type, or the type that you could get in the ring and do shit with, or he could be involved physically.
When I was a kid, it blew my mind with my father, who wasn't a wrestling fan, but he kind of knew who the major players were, when he told me that Vince McMahon owned WWF, not Jack Tunney. Again, I was a kid. I didn't realize, you know, you could be the president and not own the company. But the idea that there was the commentator who Jesse Ventura yelled at and not Jack Tunney, that blew my mind.
So that's what happened to it.
It was Vince McMahon and Jack Tunney's fault. How many people have said that?
So you've been blown by Vince McMahon and Jack Tunney.
I did not say that. Again, this whole episode has just been an incredible insight into clearly a filthy, filthy mind.
Filthy, filthy, filthy.
Jim, I have another figure here. This one, once again, from the Hastel Toys Grapplers and Gimmicks toy line. The new Mark Merrow action figure.
Does it come with Sable's suitcase?
It comes with 3 variants. There is a...
No, he wasn't even good enough for one variant. He was straight down the middle. That's what you got.
Well, no, this one has red on white trunks, or red and white trunks. This other one has black and yellow, and of course black and silver or gray here. Mark Merrow, what do you think his finishing maneuver is?
Oh, boy. Divorce papers?
The Wild Womp.
The Wild Womp. Okay, well, he wasn't the wild thing. Was he the wild one? Wild man.
Wild man.
Wild man.
He was a wild man.
That's another one. I told you the story when Bruce was all excited about signing Mark Henry. He can dunk a basketball. He was over the moon about Mark Merrow because Vince was over the moon about Mark Merrow, because Vince McMahon was over the moon about Johnny B. Bad, which is what he was thought he was getting when he got Mark Merrow. And then you should have heard Bruce trying to sell me Sable. Oh, and his wife's beautiful and she's coming with him. I say he's going to be a babyface? Oh, yeah. Well, why does he need the woman? Well, because she's his wife and she's beautiful. Well, then everybody will be staring at her and not paying any attention to him. And why does a babyface need a girl in his corner? Isn't that rather presumptuous and obnoxious of him? He's this big ladies' man. Oh, no, they're a married couple. Even worse. Then the women won't like him because he's married, and the men won't like him because he's married this fucking hot chick. Bruce and I couldn't get along on these gimmicks, as you can tell. By the way, everything I said would happen came to pass, but nevertheless.
You know, it's crazy. His name is Mark Mero, M-E-R-O. And there's so many similarities between him and Miro, M-I-R-O. Maybe they could be a team. Mero
Either
Miro.
that, well, no, Mark Miro, he's older now. He could be Miro's manager, accompanied by Miro.
Well, we have here, Jim, one more figure here today. And actually, there's two of these. Let me grab this. I'm very happy to say two of these are on the way to you right now in the mail.
Well, bless your little pea-picking heart.
This is the latest from Mattel's WWE Legends toy line. The brand new Big Bubba Rogers action figure. There are two variants. There is one with a white shirt, black suspenders, brown hat. And there is one with a blue shirt, black suspenders, and a black hat. Both come with sunglasses. The UWF Heavyweight Championship. And I guess what you would say, return to WCW Bubba Rogers late 90s head as well, if you want to switch the head out. So let me read the description to you, Jim.
Wait a minute, he had the same fucking head.
Well, no, but the hair, the head on the figure here.
The head on the hair,
it has a beard, it has a mustache, it has longer hair. The Big Boss Man, it's a goatee, more of a crew cut kind of look. And that's what he returned as. But anyway, the description: Big Bubba Rogers was a force to be reckoned with in the 80s, the 1980s to be exact. The agile big man began his career as a bodyguard for Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express before taking on legends like Dusty Rhodes, One Man Gang, and Michael Hayes. Later, I never think of Big Bubba Rogers versus Michael Hayes ever.
Not exactly a Briscoe and Funk rivalry, but...
Later, Rogers traveled to WWE where he dished out hard time as Big Boss Man. So we finally everyone has their Midnight Express action figures and, of course, Cornette collectibles at JimCornette.com.
Well, thank you. You actually anticipated. I was going to say, if you need more classic wrestling figures, the Midnight Express and Heavenly Bodies tag team set available at JimCornette.com. But go ahead. But
now there is a Big Bubba to protect the Jim Cornette action figure.
To serve and protect.
What are your thoughts on the fact that there is this, they call him a chase, the shirt variant? The blue shirt, which is the harder one to get. Again, not dark blue, but like a, blue shirt.
Well, like the blue boss man, like the Big Boss Man had a blue
boss man. Yes.
Yes, or the blue ball man. I don't know. What I'm trying to say to you is the boss man had the blue shirt because it was more of a police officer type of apparatus, whereas Big Bubba had a white shirt.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you because, it's funny. When I saw this, I started thinking to myself, did he ever wear that as Big Bubba? Again, it's not as dark blue. Not that it was dark blue. It's the Big Boss Man's uniform. But it's a dress shirt.
Yes.
Bluish.
Well, because they can't do an actual police or guards uniform, or that would be the infringement upon the trademark of the Big Boss Man.
I don't know if that's... Well, we'll see what you think.
Big Bubba Rogers wore white shirts. He didn't wear a blue shirt.
Well,
but now we're not to be bogged down in minutia. I'm glad to see that Big Bubba got a figure and that's why I thought it was so crazy when he left the WWF and they brought him back in WCW, that they didn't immediately and permanently make him Big Bubba Rogers, and that they tried to do the Guardian Angel and the Boss.
Yeah.
All these stupid trying to get around the copyright. Big Bubba had been a big deal 5 years previously in the same company. And it was him as much as and I understand why Vince changed Big Bubba to the Boss Man, because he wants to own the gimmicks and blah, blah, blah. And it was more of a WWF gimmick. But it was still Bubba because he was a prison guard at Cobb County in Marietta, and he had that in him. And the Big Bubba thing was what he had created himself and made based on the parameters that Dusty and I gave him as far as just a wrestling bodyguard and the things he needed to pick up on pretty quick. But that other stuff was just foolishness, and it wasn't gimmicks that looked good on him, and it wasn't stuff that he could sink his teeth into, and it was just trying to remind people in a vague way about who he had been before when he was at a big company, Pinocchio. So I hated all that other shit. He was too good for that.
What are your thoughts on the figure coming with the UWF Championship?
Well, that is think about this, Bubba. I don't even know if Dusty ever put him in a match for a title when he was our bodyguard and working the Crockett end of the territory. When they bought UWF, Dusty had so much faith in him and wanted to create or get him to the next level, even above that, and create another single heel star and put the belt on him. But that's the only singles belt he ever had or even challenged for before he went to the WWF.
I love that match, too. Him against the one-man gang on UWF TV for the title, because they're both heels. One-man gang had been there for a while with Akbar. Bubba had never been there, ever. And the fans that were still left at that point reacted to it the same way I did at home. It was such a big deal. These two guys could both move.
Yeah.
What were they both, 6'6" or 6'7"?
Gang was one of those guys with deceptively big. I don't know if he was taller than 6'4" or 6'5", but because of his weight and just the space he took up, Bubba was probably about 6'6", 6'7", maybe. And he weighed a little bit more, but they were both very similar in when they first started in the business, because Gang started with the Poffos and ICW. And when I was watching those TVs, I was like, my God, here's this fucking guy at this size that nobody's ever heard of before, has never wrestled anywhere else, and he's taken these over-the-top rope bumps and, over the top of the post and all this other stuff. And then when Bubba came along, like 5-6 years later than Gang, he was taking unique and different style bumps, and he had a different style of offense because he had really, again, had on-the-job training and had figured this out as he was going along. But he figured out some different shit that worked for him, and he picked it up quick, and it was totally unique for a style for a big guy at that time. But I can't wait to see the figure, even with all the different heads.
Figures, different heads, different shirts. You'll be getting them in the mail, and of course, those are retro figures. Thank you to everyone for making cool figures. But on the topic of cool figures, and of course anyone who gets this big Bubba Rogers figure, you need Midnight Express action figures. Let's talk about Cornette's collectibles.
Well, indeed we should. We should mention JimCornette.com, the fine quality merchandise with the low prices, including, as I mentioned, the Midnight Express Eaton and Lane and Eaton and Condrey sets. The heavily body sets remain dwindling. They are going fast. And, of course, all the other fine merchandise, including my T-shirts, books, DVDs, Cult of Cornette membership certificates, periodicals, personal grooming items, snacks, peanut butter crackers. You get all kinds of stuff at JimCornette.com.
I'm not going to stop you and protect you the same way I try to do our friendly sponsors.
Well, that's because we're not friendly. We don't need to be, because we do the business. At JimCornette.com, we don't need to be friendly because we sell shit dirt cheap. And that's what you want to pay for it is dirt.